don't even care. And I feel so insecure. I'm the very unsure. Why is life so hard and so unfair? Don't you know? Don't you know? I will be so lost. I feel weak every day without you. Can you see that's not me? I don't ever want to be wimpy.
When it comes to video game genres, one of my favorite genres to play is of course fighting games. They're so much fun and I grew up playing a lot of them. You know, from the well-known ones like the big three and from lesser known ones like Guilty Gear. And something you guys should know by now, I'm a big comic book nerd. And that may or may not be a big problem, but anyways, did y'all know there's a bunch of fighting game comic adaptations? Because there is a lot, and so today I want to talk about some of them. Not all of them, but some of them. And let's start off with a big name like...
First move, so what's it gonna be? You're trapped in a new world, a street by the three. The third chapter, so what's it gonna be? You're trapped in a new world, a street by the three. Make your first move, so what's it gonna be? You're trapped in a new world, a street by the three. The third chapter, so what's it gonna be? The third strike, y'all, a Street Fighter 3.
Back in the golden age of Street Fighter 2, the comic book company Malibu actually got the rights to produce the Street Fighter comics. However, this comic book series only ran for 3 issues. Yeah, this series got cancelled. And you're probably wondering, oh, was it due to low sales or something? No, Capcom just hated it. And was this comic book series really bad? Well, kind of, yeah. The comic book takes place after Street Fighter 2, and it begins with Shadaloo plotting their revenge on our main heroes. After that, we see Chun-Li and Ryu, and the majority of the first issue is them fighting. That's about it. Until they start making out with... What? Yeah, I kid you not, for some reason they decided to ship Chun-Li and Ryu. I don't remember Chun-Li and Ryu hooking up during the events of Street Fighter 2. I know that non-Street Fighter fans might think Ryu and Chun-Li may be a couple because they're often seen together. Heck, they're even the face of Street Fighter. But this comic, it was officially licensed by Capcom, so someone at the Capcom team had to see this and had to greenlight that. Anyways, as the comic continue, Ken gets jumped by Balrog and Sagat, and he's presumed dead. And lastly, we had the final issue, which mainly focused on people reacting to the news that Ken may be dead. And I guess Ken and Ryu are really buddies with the other fighters. Honestly, I'm gonna let that slide because the Street Fighter cartoon did a similar thing. Like I mentioned earlier, this comic book series was cancelled by Capcom, meaning that we never have a conclusion for this. Something I forgot to mention is that for some reason they say Fireball instead of Hadouken. Moving on, in 2003, the company Udon got the rights for the Street Fighter comics. And till this day, they are still producing the Street Fighter comics, not only Street Fighter, but other Capcom titles like Darkstalker. The Udon series has their own continuity, meaning that it's non-canon to the Street Fighter lore. I haven't actually read the entire run, only a couple of few issues, and overall, it's actually really great. They also have a ton of crossover stuff like G.I. Joe and the Ninja Turtles. Is it weird now that I want to see Cobra Commander or one of the other G.I. Joe characters to appear in a Street Fighter game? I'm guessing that will happen later in Street Fighter 6 Lifetime because they already did a Ninja Turtles and Spy Family crossover. But anyways, I highly recommend checking out the Udon series as it's probably the only time we're gonna see Dark Sakura because that's probably never gonna be in canon. Anyways, let's move on to the next one.
Heihachi Mishima is dead.
The King of the Iron Fist Tournament, also known as Tekken, is one of my favorite game franchises of all time. So let's talk about some of their comics. One of the early ones I can find is a series called Tekken Forever, which was published by Image Comics. And believe it or not, this comic got cancelled after 1 issue. This comic takes place in between Tekken 3 and Tekken 4. In other words, Tekken Tag Tournament. The series begins with everyone on the ground. Yeah, there's zero context of what happened, but in the next page we see Jin with Unknown. Majority of this issue has the characters just fighting and that's about it. The B plot in the story has June being resurrected, and I guess this panel is going to show her becoming a devil user or just returning back to Unknown. Honestly, I could be missing context on what's going on. Maybe this was connected to another Tekken storyline comic. But besides that, I don't really know what the plot is or what's going on. Anyways, moving on. In 2009, there was a manga series meant to be a tie-in with Tekken 6. And it was called Online Tekken Comic and was released in Ultra Jump. And weirdly enough, this series does not focus on a Mishima. Instead, it focused on Asuka. And honestly, I really love this series. It's very goofy and silly, very Tekken-ish. For example, the comic begins with Paul Phoenix versus Craig Murdoch. And since this was Tekken 6, Murdoch just continues to just make fun of King. Paul eventually wins and gets a huge check by Jin, only for Paul to get KO'd by a bear. Except it wasn't really a bear, it was Asuka. Asuka did this so she can finally talk to Jin, her distant relative. But Jin, being Jin, decides to just leave. This manga also gives us a flashback in where Jin and Asuka met for the first time and was during Jun's funeral. Of course, this comic isn't canon, but heck, I'm gonna take that as canon, alright? I also find it really funny that the next time she heard about Jin was because he was starting World War III. Like I said, it's very silly and goofy and very Tekken-ish. And if you're a Tekken fan, I highly recommend reading this. My only issue with this manga is that there is a lot of fan service, and yeah, I know Tekken's no stranger to fan service, but like, I kinda don't like it. Weirdly enough, this manga also predicted one of Tekken 7's storyline, that being Lily moving in with Asuka.
Tu sais, aujourd'hui je vais emménager chez toi. Huh? Naniを言うのよ。
In 2017, Titan Comics released a Tekken comic, which is meant to be a tie-in for Tekken 7. It's only 4 issues long and it's actually pretty solid. The story focuses on Jim hiring some of his fellow fighters to help him find a device, before it falls into the wrong hands, aka the Mishimas. As the story continues, they get attacked by Kazuya and Jin is really trying his best not to release his double form. And Jin and his team eventually find the device, and it turns out to be Angel. Heihachi eventually takes the device for himself and he becomes an angel. Jin eventually frees Angel and he asks Angel to remove the Devil Jin, but Angel refuses because she is very pissed. And then she resurrects anyone who was wounded or was down during the fight, and they became an angel. Jin transforms into his double form and begins to fight Angel and reverts everything back to the status quo. And that's about it, and I kinda wish the story was kinda canon-ish, because it gave Angel something to do. Who knows, maybe Angel will return in Tekken 8.
Your soul is mine.
Now to wrap up the big three with Mortal Kombat. Weirdly enough, as popular as Mortal Kombat is, it doesn't really have that many comic book series. One of the first comics was created by Malibu. Yes, the same company I mentioned earlier for the Street Fighter entries. And not gonna lie, their art style really works for Mortal Kombat more than Street Fighter. Anyways, the comic's pretty much a retelling of the first Mortal Kombat game, with a bunch of original characters thrown in because, yeah, the original Mortal Kombat 1 didn't really have that many characters. Yeah, I don't really know what to say about this one. It's generally an okay story. Honestly, I never even heard of this one before making this video, and that's because everyone prefers the superior Mortal Kombat X comics by DC Comics. As the name suggests, this was a tie-in and prequel for Mortal Kombat X. However, these comics are no longer canon. If I remember correctly, there were some similar storylines that happened in the comics that happened in Mortal Kombat 11. And since I'm talking about NetherRealm Studios right now, let's talk about the Injustice comic. Of course, this is a prequel comic that explains the events that happened before the game starts. And honestly, there is a lot of cool stuff that happens in this comic. Probably the most famous scene is Alfred beating up Superman. You also have scenes like Mr. and Mrs. Pitalik fighting Trigon. Overall, I definitely recommend you guys check out the Injustice comic. They're really good. And since we're still on the topic of Injustice, the Injustice 2 comic has a crossover with He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. And that's about it for the big three. Let's talk about some of the more smaller fighting game franchises that you'll probably know.
Choose your fate, make your way through the night. Stay awake. This life has just begun. Come on, burn it on the inside.
The King of Fighters, also known as KOF, is one of the most popular gaming franchises in the fighting game community. If you're not part of the fighting game community, you probably never heard of this game. But at least you know who Terry Bogard is, because he was in Smash. And so for this video, I want to take a focus on the KOF 14 manga. And the manga pretty much explains the events what happened in KOF 14, especially since KOF 14 didn't really have that much story. Occasionally in the game you get some character dialogue which kind of piece together the story, but it doesn't really do a great job. Not to mention that some of the endings for KOF 14 has some of the past villains returning. And if you were a KOF fan, you were just waiting for some answers, but it's going to take a long time before 15 when it came out. I'm pretty sure this manga is kind of loosely canon. It's not 100% canon, but loosely canon. But anyways, if you're a KOF fan, this manga is amazing. I love it. I really love the illustration of this manga as it does a really good job capturing KOF. And I'm not just saying that because there's entire chapters about my favorite team, Team Mexico. Heck, there's even an entire chapter that is focused on King of Dinosaur, who may or may not be my favorite character. Heck, there's even a scene where they unmasked King of Dinosaur and it was revealed that he was T-Sark. Like I said, if you're a KOF fan, you're gonna love this series. Before we end this video, there's one more series I want to cover, and that is Skullgirls. On November 18, 2022, Skullgirls was released on webtoons. And weirdly enough, I didn't know about this until I saw it on the webtoons homepage because I was just reading my, Batman Wayne Family Adventures. Honestly, I'm surprised I haven't made a video on Batman Wayne's Family Adventure. That series is goated with a sauce. The webtoon series, as you probably guessed it, is a retelling of the events of the game. And they do an amazing job at it. I know I keep saying this, but this art right here is amazing. Unlike the other series I have talked in this video, this one's pretty easy to access and read. The only thing you need to do is just download the webtoon app on your phone, and you just read it for free. As the time of this recording, they did finish the first season. However, I don't know if there's any confirmation that this series will get a season 2 or not. I also don't know if they have plans to release it as a physical form like they did with Batman the Wayne Family Adventures. I highly recommend checking out, especially if you want to experience Skullgirls while playing the fighting game, because I know that people are actually scared of playing fighting games because, they're too complex. And if you're a fan of Skullgirls, then you'll probably will enjoy a lot of the Easter eggs and references. That being said, that's all for today's video. Let me know in the comments below you guys want me to cover more of this, because there are ones that I did miss, like the Blaze Blue, Guilty Gear manga, heck, even the Last Blade series. That being said, I'll see you guys next time.